Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Social Media Week in UN City. I'm so glad to see so many of you coming in here today. Unfortunately, the queue outside our security is still extremely long, but we will start out as we have a tight program, and we have Neal Schaffer, and we want to make all the good time, use of all the good time we have together with you today, Neal. A special welcome to Neal Schaffer.
Thank you.
So happy to have you here. Thank you for flying in for Social Media Week in Copenhagen. I'm the Public Diplomacy and Communications Advisor to UN City. My name is Eva Isborg, and I'm here to help the UN organizations in this building to communicate the development work of the UN around the world to the public here and abroad. Over the next 2 days, we will host a range of lectures and practical workshops with the aim of getting better at utilizing social media in our daily work, and especially in the work of development. This morning, we will focus on social media that provides the opportunities for NGOs and NPOs worldwide to communicate better. Neal will speak about how we as organizations can use social media to tell our story, to fundraise, and to influence public opinion. Neal Schaffer has been nominated as one of the world's top 50 social media influencers by the famous American Forbes magazine. And you have written 3 books as well. And Neal Schaffer will introduce himself also shortly, so I will now leave the floor to you. I know you will try to leave a couple of minutes for questions, so we'll see how much time we have. Thank you all for coming.
Well, thank you very much, and good morning to you all. I just flew in from Los Angeles, California yesterday, and I realized that English is probably not your first language, so I'm going to try to speak a little bit slower than I normally would, but if you find me speaking too fast, please raise your hand and I'll try to slow down. Very excited to be here. Today we're talking about social media strategy, and you'll notice the subtitle for my presentation is A Perspective from the American Business World. Most of my work I do in the for-profit sector. However, I believe the concepts and how you create a social media strategy is the same. The objectives might be different for a for-profit or an NPO, NGO, but the process should be the same, and hopefully you'll appreciate that by the end of the presentation. I just have this one slide. Today is not about me. It's about how you can all create better social media strategies for your organization. But if I was to sum up who I was and to give you an introduction to my perspective, I'm going to start in the top left there. I am an American, born and raised in Los Angeles, but for the first 15 years of my career, I lived in Japan. I speak Chinese and Japanese, and I did business in Asia, helping American companies, Canadian companies, Japanese companies launch new sales in foreign countries. And it's really that business experience, very holistical experience, which I think has given me a somewhat unique perspective in social media. Flash forward, in 2008, I began to blog. 2009, I wrote my first book on LinkedIn. And in January of 2010, had a number of local organizations reach out to me saying they wanted help in social media. And what I realized what they needed is they needed a strategy and they needed education. It was not my job to do social media on their behalf. They have their own voice, their own culture. But once they had a strategy and the education, they could cross the chasm and become better at practicing social media themselves. And that's what I've done for the last 4 years, helping dozens of organizations, for-profit, non-profit. I've written 3 books, 2 on LinkedIn. My latest book is called Maximize Your Social, on social media strategy, covering a lot of the concepts that I cover today. And then on the bottom left there, I teach as part of a social media MBA program. Social media is now being adopted in American universities. I teach at Rutgers University in New Jersey, as well as I have a blog called Maximize Social Business that you should all look into if you want further resources regarding social media. So right now, and this is coming from an American perspective. Now, when I lived in Japan in the 1990s, I remember the days of Nokia, of Ericsson being at the top of mobile phone technology, and Americans were very far behind. And Japanese created iMode, and the world has since changed. Similarly, in social media, I do believe that the United States is at the forefront because the networks are from the United States is one of the reasons. So, but I do believe that the whole world is catching up, and maybe what you see me presenting today will become reality here in Denmark in maybe 6 to 12 months' time. But right now in the United States, 93% of American companies are using social media for marketing. It is a mainstream technology, a mainstream communications channel. No one is asking why. It is something you do naturally. And in fact, companies are spending a lot more money. The percentage of a marketing budget or a communications budget that social media comprises is said in 2018 to be about 21.6% of a total marketing or communications budget. The way that we consume media is changing rapidly, and companies are realizing this, and they're shifting more and more budget into social media. So the first thing to ask yourself and your organization is, what is your current spend of all of your communications budget in social media? How does it measure up to what we have right now in the United States? And the way that we consume media is different because we are spending a lot more time online. And if we look at what we are doing online, the number one activity right now in the United States is social networking, social media, 22% of our time. It's also important to note, though, that 21% of our time is doing searches, primarily Google. 19% of our time is email and communication. So social media does not replace anything. It complements everything. The role of an email newsletter is still vital. Search engine optimization is also something critical that your organization should do. But on the bottom there, I mentioned reading content. And more people are finding social media content in search engines and in social media. So having content to share is going to become very, very important for your social media strategy. And I'll explain why in a minute. But I mentioned 22% of time being spent in social media. Actually, if we look at the top 12 most visited websites in the United States, we see Facebook number 2, YouTube number 3, LinkedIn number 7, Twitter number 9, Pinterest number 12. Some demographic, if you're trying to reach out to a younger demographic, they probably spend more than 22% of their time in social media. So I believe the statistics will show in the future, maybe we spend 25, 30, 35% of our time in social media. Now, this is a stat from the United States. And I show this not because I think the U.S. is the center of the world, which it is not, but to give you a guideline. You may be thinking, what about Denmark? What about Europe? And I want to show you that the stats are not all that different. In fact, Denmark actually has the percentage of people using the web that go to LinkedIn in Denmark is actually higher right now than in the United States, which was actually quite surprising to me. Right now, LinkedIn is the 6th most visited website in Denmark. This data comes from Alexa.com, which is an Amazon Web Services company. It's fairly reliable data. Twitter, number 9 in the US, Denmark, number 18. In the UK, Netherlands, number 12 and 13. Still a little bit behind. But even Pinterest, at number 12 in the US, number 18 in the UK, even in Denmark right now, it's number 45. You'll notice, obviously, that Germany is a little bit different. Xing is still a very, very popular platform there. But even in Germany, Xing at number 15, LinkedIn now is already caught up to number 23. So when I talk about these social media sites, I talk about it not from an American perspective, but these are now global sites. And as Facebook is caught up and LinkedIn is catching up, so I believe will Twitter and Pinterest. And I didn't even mention Instagram, obviously, and Google+. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. But what we have here to explain this change and to give you, the real reason to have a strategy and the opportunities in social media for everyone in the room is we have a convergence of information and communication. I remember life before the internet, before cell phones, and where we went for information, the information was very limited. A few newspapers, TV, radio. How we communicated was different, over the phone, writing letters. Now, we join social media to get back in touch with friends. We join LinkedIn to get back in touch with colleagues. But soon we see information in the news feed. We see a photo. We see a link. And sometimes now we find more and more news in social media. In fact, when this U.S. Airways plane landed on the Hudson River in New York back in 2011, I believe, it was the first time that CNN said, as reported on Twitter. But now in 2014, a lot of the news we see around the world comes from Twitter first. It is where the news breaks. And it may be a little bit scary, but the latest data shows that 47% of US Facebook users, or about 30% of all Americans, get news from Facebook. And I believe this is a trend that we're going to see catching up in the rest of the world. 39% of Twitter users, that most of the news they found in tweets was materials they wouldn't have read elsewhere. This is why your organization, by providing timely content, you too can be found as news and get greater exposure for whatever you're doing. That's why it's important to have a daily perspective, a daily publication, so that you too can be found and consumed in the newsfeed, and for free, really get more people to understand more about your organization and what you're doing. Because now we turn to social media for the news. And I believe that this gives everybody in the room 3 distinct opportunities. On the far left, you have a new way, a very exciting way, a very interactive way of reaching out, of engaging, of thanking your donors, of reaching out to advocates, influencers, citizens. In the middle there, if we tune now to social media for more news, we now have the opportunity, just by communicating and sharing information, to be found. When people want to find out about an issue, hopefully they'll find our news about the issue, follow us, become our advocate over time. And on the far right, we can now manage not only our reputation, but discover new opportunities, because a lot of this social media posting is becoming what we call social big data. It's becoming public data that anybody can search, access, and communicate, respond, and find opportunities. So I want to now shift gears into social media strategy, because if you are actively doing social media on behalf of your organization, you are probably feeling as overwhelmed as your colleagues are in the United States. You're wondering where the ROI of it is. Maybe internal stakeholders that are not being cooperative because they do not understand social media, maybe executives in your organization. How do you know how well you're doing in social media? And always lack of budget, lack of resources. This is universal, regardless of for-profit or nonprofit. And I believe that a social media strategy will answer all of these questions and issues that you have. In fact, American marketers, there was a survey done last year that said 83% of marketers are challenged with probably the same challenges that you have. How do I create a strategy? How do I measure ROI? What tactics are most effective? What are the best ways to engage with my audience? What are the best tools? And like I said, I believe a strategy will respond and provide an excellent answer for all these questions. The other thing to remember about social media, most of this did not exist a few years ago. Twitter was made for people to keep in touch over a cell phone, and now it's where the news breaks, right? Facebook was made for college students, and now it's for older people. So we are hijacking social media sites, and they are changing. And social media will continue to change, because who uses social media, how we use it, and the functionality being provided by these sites is always in flux. This is another reason why you need a strategy to measure, because perhaps you may be getting more impressions on your LinkedIn company page of 300 followers versus a Facebook fan page of 2,000 fans because of the recent changes in the Facebook algorithm. Maybe it makes sense to shift more of your resources from Facebook to LinkedIn. Only by having a strategy and by measuring will you know. So in essence, social media is an experiment. It's a sociological experiment, a psychological experiment. Only by trying new things and measuring will we find what works. Who knew when Facebook experimented with encouraging organ donation and prompting Facebook users to add your donor status to your timeline, that you would see an immediate 2,000% increase in the number of people signing up as donors. I have nonprofits, for-profits. We have a Facebook fan base of 2,000 fans. What do we do? Have you ever asked them a call to action? Have you ever asked them to respond to something? And you won't know until you try. That's why experimentation is a critical part of social media engagement. And just some data that I'm going to be providing to you from the nonprofit world. There have been some pretty definitive studies. This is from the Nonprofit Social Network Benchmark Report 2012. A little old, but I think the data is still relevant. The top factor for NPO social media success, the number one answer was we developed strategy. Now, I developed over 4 years of working with companies a framework for developing a social media strategy, realizing that social media is an experiment. I don't expect any of you in the room to know who this person is. Does anybody know who this is by chance? It's an American professor? Sir? It's Professor Edwards Deming, who is considered the godfather of quality control. When I was in Japan working for a manufacturer, every employee had to learn about what you see here, which is called the Deming Circle. It was made for experiments, okay? What do you do when you have an experiment? You plan what you want to achieve, you do the experiment, you check your results, and then you act upon it and optimize. It is a never-ending circle. This is the most appropriate framework for social media. The planning is the social media strategy. The doing are the tactics. Most organizations do the tactics without the strategy. The strategy should dictate the tactics. Then you check. You need to measure. Measure regularly. Did you meet your plan, your objectives? And then you act upon that. And it's a never-ending circle. And maybe you review your metrics on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, but it requires you to review because the tactics you use today will not be the same tomorrow because social media is a never-changing landscape and your results are going to be different on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. So where to start when creating a social media strategy? And there are many, many elements that I would say go into a social media strategy, but the initial place to start is your objective. Why are you doing social media? What are you trying to achieve? And this is where you determine your metrics for the ROI of your social media program. The community, who are they? Who are they in social media? How do they use it? The more you know about them, the more appropriate your engagement, your content will be for them. What are you going to share as an organization? Social media was made for people, not for organizations. So organizations need to talk like people. And it's not easy to do, especially for a lot of for-profit organizations. And a lot of the times, how you engage with people is through content, whether they be photos, videos, blog posts, or what have you. So understanding your content is going to be critical to the success of your social media strategy. Who is going to do the work is also critical. Is it going to be an employee who knows your brand? Is it going to be an outside agency that you've worked with for several years? What about your branding guidelines? And when I talk about branding guidelines, it's not about static web copy, it's a voice. What is the voice of your organization? What does it sound like? If I was to read a tweet in 140 characters, can I gather or grasp the essence of your culture through the tone of your tweet? These are things that are challenging organizations worldwide. And then the onboarding. How are we going to start with integrating the social media strategy into everything our organization does? Now, there are some companies, and maybe some of you already have a strategy, but a recent stat from the United States felt that only 34% of businesses felt their social strategy was connected to business outcome. You have a strategy for your organization. What I'm asking you to do is figure out what pieces of that strategy can you fit social media into. What pieces of that strategy will social media help complement and accelerate your efforts? Your strategy must be tied to your organization objectives. Otherwise, it's not really a strategy. Now, what are some of the objectives? Once again, I call upon this nonprofit benchmark report. These are the top objectives for nonprofits recently. Growing our fan base, engaging more of our members, fundraising, cross-pollinating members, taking members from our mailing list, having them follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, what have you. These are the top 4 things. Now, when I think about social media strategy objectives, there are a number of different things you can do. On the left is more of the for-profit world. When you talk to a CEO about social media, they speak the language of Excel, right? How is it going to help me increase sales or increase profit? And there are a number of ways, and from a nonprofit, non-government organization, there are many ways that social media can help you increase your organization's revenue. Fundraising, building awareness, generating more website traffic where you can create a deeper relationship with social media users, helping you promote your event, growing your newsletter list. And there are ways of using social media to decrease expenses, of recruiting your next intern or employee strictly through social media, finding interns, volunteers, using social media to mobilize your volunteers to take some of the burden off your staff, and shifting from your traditional outreach methods. Less and less people are reading, things that come in the mail. Less and less people are reading newspaper ads, TV ads, radio ads, shifting more of that to social media. You may find you reach more people spending less money for organization. Now, on the right there, not everything, as you know, in the NPO and NGO world, not everything is about increasing money or saving money. There's a lot of intangible benefits to being in social media that are critical. Engaging your donors, deepening relationships with them, finding collaborative partners, reputation management, gathering community intelligence. What do people think about issues? Empowering your advocates, community education. For some organizations, increasing your political influence. And improving public satisfaction in the case of a lot of civic organizations. So most organizations will have multiple objectives for your strategy, and that is fine. But for every objective, you must now determine what is going to be the metric that will determine whether your social media strategy is successful or not. One thing I want to talk about is fundraising. And the statistics show that only 6% of donors of any age have given money through a social networking site. I find many nonprofits in the United States, they use social media like they use newsletters or everything else they do as a one-way blast. And social media is a two-way conversation. So if you're looking at social media to find millions of dollars for your organization, I don't think it's going to be the most effective use of your time. In fact, the social media user, the consumer, is more empowered than ever to tune out those companies, to unlike your page, to block your page if they think you're trying to sell or market to them. On the other hand, half of Gen Y donors and 40% of Gen X donors have shared about a charity on Facebook. So yes, they may not directly donate money, but they can help you in sharing your message, and that is a more effective way, I believe, of using social media for your nonprofit. In fact, 53% of nonprofits surveyed did not use social media for fundraising. Social media is not going to be as effective for everything. So if you're thinking about fundraising, it's one objective that I do not think should become your primary objective based on the data and how people use it. Now, I talked about many of the intangibles. Here is actually a case study that comes right here from Copenhagen Commune, City Government of Copenhagen. Objective, provide better civil service, create an active online community. More and more people are spending time on Facebook. So just like you have a web page, you have a Facebook page. It gives you the ability to engage. What was the ROI of doing this? Acquired more than 11,500 fans in 4 months, more than 1,000 comments with 90% of them being positive, is now the second largest traffic referrer to the city's website. And when a survey was done, which is a very effective tactic to understand how well you're doing in social media, by asking, almost 2/3 of those surveyed of Facebook fans had a higher satisfaction with municipality services. This data was actually provided by Comfo, which is a company located right here in Copenhagen, and they're the reason that I'm here as well. And they have a set of really excellent Facebook tools if you're looking for more tools to use. Now, I talked about objectives. Let's now move on to the users. Defining your community. How do they use social media? What relationship do they want with you? What media do they consume? What do they search for online? What images would engage them the best? What makes them tick? And I think one good way of looking at it is if you were going to create a very, very targeted ad, how would you target them? Age, city, what other pages they might like, what other keywords would show up in their profiles. Like I said, the more and more you know about them, the more appropriate and effective your engagement and your content will be. And content becomes key to engagement. Now, every organization in the room can do the exact same thing that the Human Rights Campaign, which is a Facebook page, did. They had a number of Facebook fans. They were not getting very much engagement. What they decided to do was go into their Facebook insights and analyze the data. Try to find what were the topics that generated the most activity from their fans. It's a very, very simple way to measure and to analyze that more and more organizations should do. Facebook provides this for free for any fan page manager. By publishing more appropriate content, in 14 months, they went from 80 to 350,000 fans. Facebook now directs 1/3 to 50% of their web traffic. They acquired 23,000 new email addresses. You can obviously put a sign up to my newsletter tab or do a Facebook campaign requiring an email address to enter. Many, many ways of doing this, but you can see how just tweaking your content can help you reach a lot of your objectives if it's done in the right way. So as an organization, This is a sample, editorial calendar, and if you do a Google search for free editorial calendar, you'll find many similar templates. But now every organization is a media company. And this is the way you need to start thinking about all the information you want to share, of putting it on a day-to-day basis, on a network-by-network basis, a theme basis, an event basis. Because if you can do this, it's going to be the key to help you measure how much time you spent, what tactics worked or not, and what you can be doing to optimize all that. And I'm not talking about any content. The whole idea about social media is you want to create content, share. Create shareable content. The people for the ethical treatment of animals, a PETA, Joel Bartlett, director of marketing, I think had a pretty profound quote when he said the key to shareable content is evoking emotions. If people feel strong emotion, they will feel compelled to tell the people they know about the experience. And as nonprofits and NGOs, I think you have a lot of stories that you can tell to evoke emotions that a lot of for-profit companies do not have. So try to use that to your benefit. Now, when I talk about content, there are many, many different forms of content. A status update, a blog post, a photo, a video, a presentation, a document, infographic, memes, discussion, reviews, even advertisements are a type of content. And you're going to have to find out the mix of content that works depending on the social media channel, as well as your own organization and your own objectives. And the reason you need to understand there's lots of different contents, there are some networks like Facebook that have something called EdgeRank that prevent your message from being heard by all of your fans. And I won't talk just about EdgeRank here, but it's important to be able to mix up your content, see what is more engaging, what's getting more impressions, what's getting more likes, so you increase the likelihood that the next time you publish something, you will get more engagement and therefore get more exposure into the Facebook newsfeed. There's already been a lot of data that suggests that photos and videos will get you the most engagement in Facebook. The problem is, just posting photos and videos, you miss out on other opportunities, because currently status updates, just posting something, will get you 4 times more impressions on average than a photo or a link. This number changes all the time. It's going to be different for every one of your fan pages. That's why, having these sort of posts on a daily or 2 or 3 time a week basis make a lot of sense. Asking questions, fill in the blank, easy call to action, crowdsourcing ideas. These are the most popular types of things that work in the United States, maybe a little bit different here in Denmark and in Scandinavia and in Europe. But mixing your photos with these types of things will probably help you increase engagement and increase how much exposure your content gets in the news feeds. And then we have the ultimate EdgeRank killer, which is promoting your posts. And most people and a lot of organizations say, wait, social media should be free. But I tell you, you can get your name listed in the phone book for free. But if you want more exposure with an advertisement, you pay money. This is what's happening to Facebook, and this is what's going to happen to every social network, because there are too many people, too much content, only a few pieces of content go on your newsfeed. It's supply and demand. I think on the flip side, paying a little bit of money, this is an example of paying $30, I'd be able to get my post seen in the newsfeed of between 4,500 and 8,000 people. Spending a little money in social media can make your social media strategy a lot more effective, because people cannot scale. Social media relies on people. We are limited. Most of you may not even have a full-time social media person, but paying a little money, can help you reach more people and make you that much more effective. So I urge you, if you have not experimented with what we call paid social, you experiment with it, because it is a reality. It is almost becoming a best practice in America for organizations once a month at a minimum to promote a post to just keep their company or organization in the newsfeed of their followers and friends. The other side of Facebook are the other types of advertisement that you see, which gives you the ability to micro-target. And once again, if you haven't tried Facebook advertising, it is amazing the ability you can find your community, whether they know about you or not. You can find friends of people in your community that are trusted by your community that hopefully will also become your fan as well. And this is something that Facebook is trying very hard to make it very, very easy for all of you to use. There's other ways of using Facebook ads, of something we call custom audiences, of uploading your email newsletter list and finding those people in Facebook. So once again, unfortunately, with only 45 minutes to talk, it's hard to talk about the entire scope of social media, but I want to give you ideas that you can research and implement after I leave Copenhagen. And, benchmarking your activities. Now, from this same report, nonprofits and NGOs found that the average cost of a Facebook like is $3.50. I have run campaigns where the average cost of a Facebook like was 15 cents. So it's going to be different for all of your organizations. The key to Facebook ads is to give Facebook multiple combinations of text and images so they can find the one with the best engagement and give you the lowest price. Now, some of you may think $3.50 is a lot of money, but those same organizations said the average value of a Facebook like over the first 12 months after acquisition was $214.81. This is a very, very nice ROI, I think, from a cost of $3.50. This is the way to look at your social media activity. Try to find numbers. What is the average person that subscribed to your newsletter? How much on average would they donate over the course of a year? And try to apply that same data to a Facebook like and see what your numbers come up with. This is some of the ways that you correlate data and you analyze data to find the ROI of what you do in social media. Now, if you're a for-profit company and you spend $30 on Facebook ads to sell a $1,350 puppy, the ROI is a lot more easier to calculate. I realize it will not be as easy for your organization. But the other data I wanted to show you here is the average cost per click in the United States is between 26 and 33 cents. So you can promote a post, you can advertise and try to get more likes, or if you have a fundraising event, you can post an ad and try to get people to click on it, go to event, and I think it'll be very, very easy to calculate your ROI in such an instance. So I wanted to just do a brief overview of the channels and where they fit into the social media strategy. Facebook is where everybody is. It makes sense that every organization is on Facebook. Well, what about Twitter? Twitter is a huge real-time search engine. In fact, it was said that there were more searches being done on Twitter than on Yahoo and Bing combined. This makes Twitter the number 2 or number 3 largest search engine in the world. And it's all real-time information. It's where the media is. So if you want your nonprofit or NGO to be picked up by the media, you should have a Twitter presence. And for-profit companies monitor information, looking for mentions of their company name, and they contact those people and they make a lot of business. This is an example of how one company made $250,000 just by monitoring Twitter and looking for mentions of them and contacting those people. Because Twitter is an open network. It's not like Facebook. We have a lot of private profiles. Pretty much 99% of Twitter profiles are open. So it gives you all the same ability to reach out to people in a real-time way. There's other ways of using Twitter. One of them is Twitter chats. And while there are hashtags on Facebook, really Twitter is the king of hashtags, and it gives you the ability, just as we are using SMWCPH, my friends in the United States can follow what is happening today in Copenhagen. And you can engage a global audience with a hashtag in what we call a Twitter chat. Save the Children did a Twitter chat, a 12-hour, 12-time zone Twitter chat that reached 5 million people, 43 million impressions, even had a number of international hosts, WHO directors, the Rwandan health ministers, celebrity chefs, all sharing their passion of saving the children and what they call the hidden crisis. So I believe Twitter is really a world stage. When you're ready to go out to the world and tell your story, Twitter is going to help you get that story out there to the world. And if you haven't experimented with a Twitter chat, you really should. It's a great way to engage in conversations with all sorts of people worldwide. Now, one of the things about social media, and I want to bring up important concepts that should become part of your strategy, is something called content curation. And we curate content because if we're just talking about ourselves, people will get bored of us. They will tune us out. When we start talking about broader issues, when we share information from partner organizations or organizations we want to align ourselves with, we become a bigger entity and we acquire what we call thought leadership. When someone thinks of an issue, they immediately think of our organization. 85% of marketers in the United States think that content curation is an important tool to establish thought leadership. So if you were going to post 2 or 3 times a day on Facebook, on Twitter, why not share other people's information as part of that content? In fact, on Twitter, you can retweet your advocates' information. You can retweet your influencers' information. You could retweet your sister organization from around the world's information. It is in these ways that we can establish thought leadership for organization, not only on Twitter, but elsewhere. Instagram, becoming very, very popular now in the United States. This is an example of Disneyland, who posts daily to Instagram, and it's all content taken by their fans. Disneyland does not post one of their own content on Instagram. In fact, Ritz-Carlton Hotel is the same. It is all done from their fans. I cannot think of a better way to engage with people than by sharing their photos, their content on your channels. It is an opportunity for everyone in the room to engage at a deeper level, to thank your donors, your citizens, and it's becoming a best practice, not only on Instagram, but on other channels as well. And since I talked about Instagram, I should also talk about Pinterest, which is another one of these newer social networks. And Pinterest may not be appropriate for every nonprofit. I think what you should do is, if you go to the top left of Pinterest.com, you'll notice a bar or a square with 3 bars in it. You'll notice all the categories that appear in Pinterest. And if your organization can align itself with one of these categories, like the People for Ethical Treatment of Animals. There's an animals category, great. There's a category that you can post images to. If you can't really align your organization with a category here, this may not be the best place to spend your time and your resources. So it's about choosing the right channels. So what about the corporate world? What channels do they choose? Now, the numbers you see here in a blue circle are the channels that nonprofits in the United States are participating on. So Twitter is being used by 3/4 of corporations and about 3/4 of nonprofits. Twitter is actually more popular than Facebook because Twitter, it breaches the consumer world as well as the business world, as well as the media world. And if I was going to write a strategy for a nonprofit, for a consumer-facing business, or a business-facing business, Twitter would be an important part of that strategy. Facebook being used by 98% of nonprofits, no surprise. YouTube, 66%. Google+, 23%. And I'll talk a little about Google+. Foursquare, Pinterest, Instagram, under 10%. And unfortunately, the statistics does not include LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is being used by 44%. And it's because you're able to reach a professional demographic on LinkedIn that you can't reach on Facebook. Many Americans have a Facebook account, but it's only for private, for friends and family. But on LinkedIn, they're actually more open, and they will engage with you. If you're looking for advisory members to your board, partners, LinkedIn is going to be a great place. I'm actually presenting on LinkedIn at Maersk headquarters at 11:30. If any of you are interested in that, I'll be talking more about it. Now, I want to just talk about Google Plus really quickly because it is one of the least understood social networks in the world. It's because Google Plus is not just a community, a social network like any other network, but it's also what Google calls the social layer. Google is using Google Plus to tie in Gmail, YouTube. YouTube comments now are Google Plus comments. To tie in your ads, to tie in Google search into the layer that they call Google Plus. So that's why Google Plus is a little bit different, but understanding if Google is important to your organization, then Google Plus should be important to your social media strategy as well. And if you haven't seen the impact that what we call Google Search Plus Your World has, once you become a Google Plus user, those who you follow and who you engage with on Google Plus affect your search results. So just by your organization, whatever you post on Twitter or Facebook, posting that on Facebook, on Google Plus, acquiring more followers for your Google Plus will help you get found in more searches. It is what we call in the United States a no-brainer that you should have a presence. And in fact, there's many other ways of using Google Plus. One of the most exciting things about Google Plus is what we call a hangout. It is a video conference that you could have. We could be doing a hangout, we call a hangout on air right now, of publicly showing my video to everybody that wanted to see it on Google Plus, and then archiving that in YouTube. So now you create YouTube contents. Cadbury in the UK is one example of a company that's doing great things. When they reached 500,000 followers in Google Plus, they had a hangout to thank their fans. You know, Cadbury employees were talking to them. They had a chocolate taster circle chat with a Cadbury chocolate developer, behind the scenes. It's really the most powerful way to engage with your citizens, with your advocates, is through video and through a conversation. And Google Plus allows you to do this. No other social network does. So if you're thinking about Google Plus, I urge you to also look into hosting a Hangout. But there's a lot of different channels, and you don't need to be in all of them. What I learned very early is the most important part of a strategy is deciding what not to do. There's a lot of objectives, choose a few. There's a lot of channels, choose a few that make the most sense for your organization. Now, who's going to do the work? And there's a lot of different things you can do here. An intern, a shared role, where you don't have enough budget. So someone in communications spends an hour a day. Very, very common. A dedicated role. Insourcing talent. Social media is not rocket science. You can train your people to learn how to use it to represent your organization. But what about insourcing content? If you need to be sharing content on a daily basis, of asking your employees to write blog posts, to take pictures. In fact, asking your fans to take pictures, to share their stories, is a great way to open up your brand to the community, but also to insource content. And then we have outsourcing. And if you are a large organization, there are a number of different sort of models which most companies are doing. I'd say the hub and spoke, where you have one or two people that are the social media leads in an organization that share their wealth of knowledge with everybody throughout the organization. But the state of the union for most smaller nonprofits and non-government organizations is that 56% are using 1/4 of a full-time employee. In other words, on average, 2 hours a day is the amount of time that they're spending on social media. So if you are at that benchmark, that's great. If you're not, you may want to think of spending more. And if you have a full-time employee, you may want to take a step back and make sure that you're achieving your objectives. I talked a little bit about voice. Most organizations have a branding guideline. Very few have a guideline for voice, which is critical for social media. Aligning your voice with your community. If the average age of the community that you're targeting is in the 40s and 50s, and you have a 20-something person that's doing the tweeting, they need to sound like their community. You need to align your voice. Do you customize your voice per channel, per social network, or do you keep it consistent? Do you have one voice or multiple voices? This all comes down to your brand, your culture, and who you are as an organization. There's no one answer. In fact, I like to think that social media is half science and half art. And I'm going over the science with you, but you all need to be the artists and implement it the best way, depending on your organization, your culture, your objectives. Then the onboarding. Now, I didn't talk about listening today, but a listening strategy, an engagement strategy. How do you engage when people engage with you? A social media policy for your employees, social media guidelines, internal communication, training, having a step-by-step phased approach. These are all critical things to have when you start to implement social media organization-wide as part of your onboarding. Where do you go from here? Let's go back to the Deming Circle, PDCA, plan, do, check, action. This is all about the plan. Once you're done with the plan, it's about the tactics, which you dictate and map out and architect in your plan. Your daily workflow, campaigns, which you should have on a regular basis, integrating social media with what you do in your other communication channels. And then the C, the checking, the ROI, the metrics, maybe a quarterly review and fine-tuning of everything that you do. And it becomes this workflow. And if you do this for a living, you probably are doing this naturally, of creating content and curating content and sharing and engaging and never-ending experimentation. Different types of content, different types of conversations. And it may sound like a lot, but it becomes what I call muscle memory. And if any of you at the gym have tried to balance yourself on a ball like this, you start shaking, but after a day or two, you begin to stabilize and you can do squats. It's muscle memory. Social media is muscle memory. This workflow becomes very natural once you start doing it full time. I'd say the thing that requires the most amount of time is the creating of content. The thing that requires the most amount of creativity and artistry is the experimenting and trying new and different things. And it's really a different mindset of integrating social everywhere. Everything you do as an organization, is there a way that you can use social media to help you reach that goal? That's why in the United States we talk about social business. Social media is not just being used in marketing and communications and public relations. It's being used by human resources, by legal, by sales, business development, product development, R&D. It's being used enterprise-wide now. Finally, we come to the metrics. And I don't think Albert Einstein ever said this, but I love this meme that I found on the internet. Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. Think about that for a second as I take a sip of coffee here. So what metrics matter? A sampling from the United States of NPOs, website visitors was the most important metric they were following. Reach, number of impressions, number of clips, customer feedback, number of registered members. These were the biggest metrics that they were following. But it's not about, it's about your objective. A lot of these metrics people follow because they're easy to get. If you use a social media dashboard like a Hootsuite, you get a lot of data, a lot of statistics. It's not about the metrics that you get from a social media dashboard or an agency. It's really about, did you meet your objective or not? If your objective was to raise brand awareness and part of that was increasing traffic to your website, great. But if it wasn't, getting more website visitors, how did it help you reach your objective? It may not have. And I think you should really begin with metrics that hopefully you already have. How much would it cost if you were to advertise to get an impression in the media? What is the value of media coverage, of an email subscriber, of a website visitor? And once we have the value, what about the cost of a website visitor? Customer lifetime value. If we have a new supporter over the age of their life, how much on average would they donate? The cost of acquisition of a new donor, the cost to retain a new supporter. These are all metrics that you should have because social media ROI is a lot easier to calculate than ROI in traditional media. So start with your traditional media, the ROI from that, and apply the same data to your social media analytics. And my book goes into all this in more detail, but if I was to give you a framework for your metrics, I believe there are 3 types of metrics. Comparative metrics. Compare yourselves to other NGOs and NPOs to see if you're, quote unquote, keeping up with the Joneses. If someone has twice the engagement that you have, do some analysis and find out why. And use that as a metric to track how you're doing. That's one thing that I think every organization should do. In the middle there, we have secondary. These are the metrics like number of retweets per month or growth in followers. These do not help you reach your objective, but they tell you how effective your social media is. They're what I would call secondary metrics. And then we have the primary metrics, which are tying your social media efforts into your objectives and the true social media ROI. And there's no dashboard for that. There's no tool. There's no cookie cutter approach because everybody's objective in the room is going to be very, very different from everybody else's. So we tie our social efforts and our metrics together. Did we achieve more than we thought we would with our given budget? Great, let's invest more. If we did not, why not? Were the assumptions in our strategy wrong? Did we not implement correctly? And try to tweak it until you get to that positive ROI. But then you get to a point, this is a quote by a famous author in the United States named Gary Vaynerchuk, who said, what's the ROI of your mother? When he was asked, what's the ROI of social? Just like you have a website, you have social media. If you have a website, you're not reaching a quarter of the internet that's engaged in social media. So after a while, you too and your executives and internal stakeholders will stop asking what's the ROI and realize it is a natural way of doing business. It is a natural way of engaging with your community. So hopefully we have time for questions, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. 10 minutes for questions. And I urge you all, if you're interested in hearing more about the topic or what have you, there is a way to give feedback on every presentation that you hear. This is my URL, I guess, D4CV. I do hope that you will give feedback and let the organizers know if the content and the presentation has been valuable to you or not. Thank you very much. So let's go for the questions. Excuse me.
You had a slide where we saw the difference between posting a photo and a daily status. I was just wondering if we could see that one again, please.
Posting of a photo and daily stages. So the difference in engagement between photo, video, status
exactly.
update, and link. Okay. That is from specifically on Facebook. In general, whether it's Facebook or Google Plus or even Twitter, posting a photo is going to get more space in the news feed, be shown more prominently, and therefore will attract more eyes and get more engagement. Just 1 second. Maybe quicker to do on my computer, actually. Let me go back in time here. Almost there. Voila. This comes from a company called Simply Measured. They're an American social media metrics company. They put out a lot of great reports like this. Definitely check them out. But this is this data is a little bit old. It was when the new timeline in Facebook was introduced, but I believe that it's still very, very relevant, that photos definitely you should be posting on a daily basis. But like I said, people engage with different content differently, and Facebook weighs different types of content differently. Definitely experiment with status updates and other types of content as well. We have a question.
Yeah. Thank you for a very interesting presentation. I'm really inspired.
Thank you.
My question is, the NGO that I'm working for has two very different target groups. One are young 20 to 30s women who are socially conscious, and another group are women who are retired and who buy the products that we are selling. These are fair trade products.
Okay.
Because they are touched by the stories of the women who are producing these fair trade products.
Okay.
How should we focus our strategy on Facebook or Twitter if we have these two quite different target groups?
Okay, that's a great question. A lot of organizations have multiple units or multiple products or what have you. So first of all, I mentioned that part of a strategy is deciding what not to do, and that social it cannot cure, the world's problems. So I would actually start with understanding who your audience is and who uses social media more. And I'm assuming that the younger groups would use it more. I would actually start with just focusing on that group. And what's going to happen, and I talked about on the onboarding, step-by-step phased approach. Phase 1, begin with that group, experiment with the channels, and probably Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, what have you, are going to be the popular channels. And from that experience, you are going to gain the knowledge of what it's like to create a strategy, to implement, to measure, and it's going to help you when you want to reach out to the second group. You're going to be a lot more effective doing it. So I would, at a later stage of phase 2, once you feel very confident of starting to target the other group, and I would almost think you may want to have a different handle or maybe a separate page, separate Twitter channel, and a lot of organizations have them, to target that other groups, that your conversation doesn't get, divergent or dissolved, or I'm trying to think of the right English word. You can always, the other way to do it is, if you find in going into Facebook Insights that you are attracting those older people because they love your organization, you can try to mix the content, maybe once or twice a week, to serve content that would serve that older group and see how people engage with it. Because you may find that some of the content may be universal to both groups. But at some point, you would probably want, you may be able to do it in one single channel. Some organizations can. But at one point, you may want to branch that into two. That's a very, very natural thing to do, I think. But take one baby step at a time would be my best advice.
Yes, here. Here.
Oh,
hello.
Thank you.
And thank you. It was really, really a very inspirational presentation.
Thank you.
I'd like to know if you're familiar with this initiative, LinkedIn for Good.
Yes.
And if you are, can you tell me a bit about it, and if you know other companies that are doing exactly the same?
Yes, so LinkedIn for Good is an initiative that LinkedIn has, and they've done, I only talk very, very briefly about LinkedIn, but what they're trying to do is they're trying to get people to talk about the organizations that they support. So in your LinkedIn profile now, if you support a cause or an organization, you can now put that as part of your profile. And the first thing that I would do if I worked for a NPO or NGO is to have my employees put that in their profile so that when people look at their profile, they learn about your organization indirectly. It is an easy way to promote your organization. LinkedIn is doing a lot more things of having people speak about it at their organization, of having more thought leaders come from the nonprofit world and for the social good world. So I unfortunately did not prepare any case studies of companies that are using it, but if you come up to me afterwards and give me your email address, I'll be more than happy to send you more information. But yes, LinkedIn is definitely trying to, they realize that professionals are becoming branded professionals. They are consuming more information. They are contributing to the world in many ways, and they want to bring, I'll share a story. Let me just take a sip of water here. Apologies. When I met a director at LinkedIn, and they asked me why I did social media, and I actually was in Beijing during the Tiananmen demonstrations, and I said I believe social media in some ways contributes to world peace by breaking down barriers between people and between cultures. And I said, you may think I'm crazy, and the LinkedIn director said, no, our CEO believes the same thing, that people by joining LinkedIn and becoming empowered can change the world in a similar way. So doing the LinkedIn for social good is part of their mission, and I think you're going to see more about that. But like I said, please give me your contact details. I'll give you more information.
Hi, just one question over here.
Okay.
Hi. If you don't have a viral video hit, how good does video work on Facebook or maybe other social media platforms? Can you say a few words on that?
Excellent question. So video is interesting, and when I work with organizations, video is usually the one thing that requires the most resource, the most time, the most money. And social media budgets are very, very limited. So I think there's a tremendous amount of things you can do without video, which is why I don't bring it up, because I realize that. Nobody can predict when things go viral. Okay, I had a blog post about social media aptitude test, which I created, which I published maybe 2 weeks ago. And yesterday, I all of a sudden got a big spike in hits. And when I looked at it, it's because an influential Facebook page shared the link to their community, which drove people to come to my website. Cannot predict it. Nobody can predict a viral video, right? The best way and the most cost-effective way and the most engaging way to use video, I believe, is through the Google Plus Hangout. Now, you have like a Vine on Twitter or on Instagram. You can record a 10 or 15 second video. But the idea about the Google Plus Hangout is that you can record it from your computer. It's real people. It's broadcasted worldwide. It helps more people find you. And you can then archive it immediately into YouTube and then share that as content on your other pages. So that's one way I'd use video. But there's many other different ways to engage. And I'm thinking probably in social media, photos are the primary way to engage over video right now. So before video, think photo. If you have lots of resources, trying to create a video is a great way to experiment to see what sort of reaction you get. But don't expect a viral video. What you can expect, though, is that YouTube is a huge search engine, number 2 after Google. So it will become a long-term asset to your organization that will get views. So if I was creating a social media strategy that said post daily, write a blog post once a week, maybe a video would be a monthly thing or a quarterly thing. But only when you have resources. If you have limited resources, spend it on the people, on the engagement would be my best advice for you. Any other questions?
Yeah.
This is going to be the last question.
Okay. I work in an NGO where the fundraising department are thinking about engaging companies to get people to donate via clicks on they'll post something for us, and then people are supposed to click, and then they will donate. The company will donate maybe $1 or $2, something like that.
Okay.
Will that work? I mean, I'm skeptic myself because I find that people really they get confused whether they're donating or that the clique will donate, and we tried it on a personal level where everyone would post it on their personal as a status on their own page, and it didn't generate much. I mean, if you had 200 friends, maybe 20 would click on it, and you'd donate maybe 200 kroner yourself or something. Do you have any observations on that? Do you know anything about it?
Yeah, so I'd like to bring up 2 points. Number one
Thanks.
is the notion of experimentation. If you've never done that before, you should try it. Because your community is going to be very different than my community, and you'll never know. Maybe you get a lot of clicks, right? But the second part is, I didn't talk today about blogging, but a blog, I believe, should be a part of every organization's social media strategy because it gives you the ability to go into deeper information. Somebody just sees 140 characters. They don't know what it is. They're confused. But if you have a blog post which says, we're thinking of new ways of working together with the businesses that support us, and here's a new initiative that for every dollar or kroner you donate, they're going to donate 2 kroners. And you can go into more details about what it is, why you did it, maybe include interviews with the businesses, and it gives you a lot more credibility and reason and background as to why you're doing that. So that would be an excellent way of using a blog post to go into more detail and explaining that. And that would be my advice for you to do as well, in addition to the experimentation. Like I said, I'm going to be going to speak at Maersk at 11:30. I think I may have 5 minutes here before I get in my car. So if you have any other questions, please feel free to come up and exchange name cards, and I'll be more than happy to do my best to answer every question you may have. Thank you very much, and I wish you all the best of luck and your organizations as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neal. It's been extremely interesting, and as you can see, we could have gone on for an hour or two, but we have the next session